Hare Krishna, welcome everybody. So this is Krishna Dasa. Today we are going to continue the profound journey of Sankhya Yoga and Buddhi Yoga by Shri Krishna. Before we begin, I'll say the prayers to Guru and God. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna.
गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुर्साक्षात् परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः.
Hare Krishna. So today we are going to cover slokas 2.51 to 2.54. We sent these slokas on the group, so you can refer to that, and I will play these slokas now.
कर्मजं बुद्धियुक्ता हि फलं त्यक्त्वा मनीषिणः जन्मबन्धविनिर्मुक्ताः पदं गच्छन्त्यनामयम् यदा ते मोहकलिलं बुद्धिर्व्यतितरिष्यति तदा गन्तासि निर्वेदं श्रोतव्यस्य श्रुतस्य च श्रुतिविप्रतिपन्ना ते यदा स्थास्यसि निश्चला समाधावचला बुद्धिस्तदा योगमवाप्स्यसि. अर्जुन उवाच स्थितप्रज्ञस्य का भाषा समाधिस्थस्य केशव स्थितधीः किं प्रभाषेत किमासीत व्रजेत किम्.
Okay. So as I said, very powerful lessons that continues Sri Krishna's philosophy now. See, the challenge is chapter 2 is so powerful, so condensed, so full of matter that sometimes eventually you will miss it. you will miss the power packed condensed wisdom that Krishna is giving. So let's make the most of it while we are here. So here we continue. So these verses that we are going to now dive into is again a very powerful set of teachings. Here we are going to talk about how to find that stable, quiet mind when our world seems to be spinning out of control. So if you recollect in the previous sessions, Krishna had said that having that calm mind, he said that is yoga. Now, naturally it leads to this question then, how do we maintain that kind of calmness when everything around us seems to be chaotic? How do we maintain that calmness when our world seems to be not in our control, when the world is spinning out of control, when we have so many issues going on and calamities and so on and so forth? So before we look at the answer, I think we should all try to understand why Arjuna is falling apart. Why is Arjuna going through this kind of a mental breakdown? Was it just Arjuna being just scared or nervous? Of course not. He was Mahabaho. He was such a great warrior. It's not just being nervous or being afraid in the physical sense. He was going through a complete mental breakdown. Now, what we need to understand is that kind of a breakdown, it is representing the human situation where everything that we believe in seems to be crumbling. Everything that we believe in seems to be falling apart. And we are left facing some very hard questions that we never thought we would have to face. So this happens to almost every human being at some point in their life. that whatever they seem to believe in, whatever they were comfortable with, whatever they were taking for granted, a lot of things, they seem to just fall apart. They seem to question their core beliefs. But if you now introspect a little bit more, see Arjuna's life. Like Krishna himself used to tease him. He teased him like Pandita, like you talk like a Pandita. So, but that was not just a teasing. It was an indication that Arjuna was well learned. And he was raised, with this kind of a belief that you have to always do the right thing. You have to honor your mentors, your seniors. You have to defend your family. Now the problem he's facing, he seems to be wondering, or he seems to be at a crossroads where some of those beliefs are now being questioned. They are being put to test. For example, do the right thing is what he thought he should always focus on. But now he's having to fight his mentors. He's having to fight his elders. And he doesn't know if that is the right thing. So there is a conflict now in his mind. And he was taught to stand up for what is right. But now he thinks that if he has to stand up for what is right, he will have to hurt his own friends and his own family members. That is another conflict. So he feels like doesn't matter what choice he makes, everything seems to take him towards a disaster. It's that kind of a terrible stuck feeling, where some of us, we feel stuck in a situation where all the old knowledge that we have and all the answers that we already know, they don't seem to help us. They don't seem to work anymore in this new set of circumstances. So now, this is the background, this is the context. But what is really fascinating is not about what Krishna does about this situation. What is more fascinating is what Krishna does not do in this situation. What Krishna does not do, he does not get into just some pep talk, these motivational talks. You can do it. You are awesome. Believe in yourself. And so he doesn't do that kind of pep talk. He doesn't say, oh, don't worry, Arjuna, everything is going to be okay. None of those empty talks, none of those pep talks. Krishna doesn't do any of that. So what does Krishna then do? He very methodically, takes apart Arjuna's entire mindset. He takes apart the way he is seeing the world. This is like a very skilled sculptor. The sculptors who make beautiful idols. And one of the greatest sculptor, somebody asked him, how do you manage to create such beautiful idols out of stone? And he says, no, I don't create a beautiful idol. The beautiful idol was already inside the stone. I just chipped away whatever was not the idol. I just chipped away the distractions. And that's pretty much what Krishna is doing here to Arjuna. He is very methodically, very precisely chipping away false beliefs, false notions, illusions, delusions, and all of that, so that Arjuna can just realize the truth. Very, very beautiful. So in 2.51, let us see what Krishna is saying. Krishna says, you all have the sloka in front of you. You can look at the translation. So in 2.51, Sri Krishna is saying, wise individuals possessing a balanced intellect relinquish the attachment to the outcomes of their actions that entrap them in the cycle of birth and death. And by operating with this awareness, they achieve a state that is free from all suffering. That is a very power-packed sloka, 2.51. So let us try to unpack this. So Krishna is not saying that we should stop acting or we should withdraw from life. He is revealing a different way of acting, a way that does not create bondage. Because what Krishna has already taught us, that if we act with attachment to results, then every action is going to create a bondage. Doesn't matter if it is good action, bad action. Every action will create a bondage if it is done with attachment to results. Because we are not bound just by what we do, we are bound by our intent and our state of mind when we do it. So, Krishna is saying that the wise ones, they have discovered something extraordinary. They act with full engagement, but without any emotional investment in the results. This is why in the previous session, we spoke about how a master archer like Arjuna, he has complete focus on his bow, his arrow, his stance, his target. He's not seeing anything else. And with that kind of complete focus, is Arjuna worried that will my arrow actually hit the bird's eye? That thought doesn't even cross his mind. He's focusing on what is his job. His job is to use the right techniques, use the right bow, use the right arrow, stand in the right way, have the complete focus, and then release the arrow. Whether it hits doesn't even cross his mind. So is this fatalism? Is this indifference? Does it sound that way? It's not. It is just the recognition. So this is kind of evolution of 2.47. So it is a recognition that we anyways can control only our actions. We can never control the outcome. We took the example of a farmer. A farmer has control over what he does. Or, like he needs to plow the field. He needs to sow the seeds. He needs to sow them at the right time of the year. And then he needs to water them. He needs to take care of them. That's all fine. But do the seeds actually become full-grown plants or trees? That's not in his control. So Krishna is going now deeper. So Krishna is saying that we all have to focus on doing our job, playing our roles excellently, completely well. The key part is, and then accepting whatever outcome comes. That is the part where a lot of people struggle. A lot of people have a lot of struggle there. And that is the key message from Sri Krishna. We will keep repeating this. Krishna will also repeat this in many different ways. Finally, it will make sense. Once you internalize this, that will transform the way you deal with work and you deal with others around you. So Krishna is going a little deeper. So Krishna is saying that this way of acting, which way of acting? Giving your best to what needs to be done and not being attached, not being hung up about the outcomes. He's saying that frees us from the bondage of birth. Now see, it's a very important term here because he's not just talking about life and birth in the physical sense. It's a very, very beautiful, profound thing that he's saying here. What he's saying, this is so awesome. Like, if I ask one of you, like other day I was asking people to describe themselves. So, if I ask, describe yourself, how would you describe yourself? You will say, I'm a student, I'm a teacher, I'm a banker, I'm a doctor. Isn't it? It all starts from there. And not just that. If you have, you may not tell others, but at least inside you tell this to yourself. If you think you're doing well, you will say, I'm successful. If you think you're not doing well, you will tell yourself, I'm a failure. But see how many births you have already had. You have already identified with so many things. That is a birth, right? And Krishna is saying, this is the bondage that you need to get free from. Because you are not a doctor, you are not a lawyer, you are not a student, you are none of that. You are that Sat, which is beyond all of this. But because of our identification with all these other temporary things, we get stuck. That is a kind of bondage. And Krishna says you will be freed from that to start with. See? So deep, isn't it? So it is more like a psychological birth. Because when you are a child, you are a student. That is one of your births. And then you are a graduate. Hey, I'm a graduate. Then I'm like an engineer or I'm this. Isn't it? So see, these psychological births, we have so many of them in our life. I'm a manager, I'm a senior manager, I'm a director. So psychologically, we keep taking these births and keep getting into bondage. It's सुनने को अच्छा लगता है. It's good to hear, but how do you practice? How do you put this into practice in your day-to-day life? So let us say you are a surgeon and you are performing a surgery. Can you really be indifferent to whether the patient lives or dies? Is the question. Now Krishna is saying that if you ask that question, that means you have misunderstood the teaching. Because Krishna says that when you have vairagya, when you have non-attachment to results, it does not mean that you are not caring. It means that you are focusing so completely on the task at hand that you don't have any room for focusing on outcomes. Now tell me, does that not help you do your best? So let us say you have X amount of energy available to you. Now what would you prefer, or what is better? Would you spend all X in just doing a great job? Or do you want to spend half of it doing a good job and other half worrying about, hey, is somebody going to appreciate it? Am I going to get success? Am I going to get failure? Because we discussed earlier, your thoughts, your chatter that's happening in your mind, that consumes energy, tremendous amount of energy. So which of these two scenarios do you think is going to give you the best possible outcome? Obviously, if you put all your energy in your task, that's exactly what Krishna is saying. He's saying, don't be attached to outcomes doesn't mean you don't care. Don't be attached to outcomes means you actually care. You care so much that you are using your entire energy in doing your best. Very powerful teaching. If we have this kind of a attitude towards work, then any work, you will transform it from a source of stress to a form of worship. I mean, my blessings with all of you. I really wish that all of you get to experience this at least sometime in your life. How something that used to stress you out no longer stresses you out. Something that you thought as, kind of a punishment, because some people feel that way. If I have to study, that's a punishment. If I have to wake up early, that's a punishment. Isn't it? But if we have this different approach to it, then instead of that, it will become worship. And then you see how beautiful life becomes. Now comes another very profound shloka. After saying this, he goes to shloka 2.52. And here is where he uses that powerful word that we have discussed a few times. Yada te Moha Kalilam buddhir vyatitarishyati tada gantasi nirvedam shrotavyasa shrutasya cha. So, he says, when your intellect transcends the dense forest of delusion, then you will attain dispassion for what is yet to be heard and what has already been heard. I'll try my best to explain this. So here Krishna is using a very strong imagery. He is saying a forest of delusion. Moha Kalilam. Now it's not a physical forest, a physical jungle he's talking about. He's talking about our state of mind. The state of mind where our attachments, assumptions, anxieties, they all create a forest so dense that our intellect gets lost. Our intellect is not able to see the path clearly. And then we feel stuck. And every decision seems to take us further towards confusion. And Krishna goes on to say that the delusion he's talking about is about the fundamental misidentification. What does that mean? The Vedanta will call it as adhyasa or superimposition, where we just discussed. We are mistaking the temporary for the permanent. We are confusing our changing roles, our emotions, bodily sensations. We are confusing all of that with our true identity. And we get so entangled in all those details of our lives that we mistake those temporary appearances for the true reality. That is so we are creating our own dense forest of delusion, where our intellect gets all lost. So Who are you? If I ask you that question again, you are not really clear who you are. 10 years ago I was a student, and then I was this, then I'm a wife, then, I'm an engineer, or then I became a doctor, then I became a manager, whatever, or then I became a success, then I became a failure, then I became strong, then I became weak. But the way you say it is, when you feel strong, I am strong. When you feel weak, you say, I am weak. Isn't it? As if you become that. We identify with that instead of saying that it is something that is happening. You see, very few people will actually say, I experienced success. People will say, I became successful. Very few people will say, I failed. Many people would say, I was a failure. There's a big difference there. And this kind of misidentification, where we identify with all those temporary things, Krishna says that is what gives or creates this Moha Kalilam, dense forest of delusion, where our intellect gets lost. And Krishna is instructing us. He's saying we have to learn to cross beyond this forest. How would you do that? He's saying you cannot do that by just fighting every thought. You cannot do that by fighting or forcing, a particular perspective. You cannot do that by entertaining every confusion that you have. He says, instead, you need a fundamental shift in perspective. What is that fundamental shift? Krishna says, don't identify with things that are temporary. Don't identify with your thoughts. The only identity you should have is with that clear awareness which is behind those thoughts. Are you thinking about this? Like, what is this going on? Is it something that sounds super complicated? Or I'm happy to pause if it's not making sense. But tell me something. When you have a thought, do you say, I am thinking? Or do you say, I am the thought? Almost everybody says, I'm thinking. Correct? And what does that mean? That means that you are not the thought, because you say you are thinking. So that means that thought and you are two different things. Correct? This is the beginning. This is the beginning of your journey. Just like that, do you say this is my hand, or do you say that I am the hand? No. Do you say it is my leg, or do you say, I am the leg? Now you have to think like this. If you think more, you will realize that there is always something which is higher. Something which is observing. Something which is conscious. Krishna says you have to identify with that. That is you. No, you are not success. You are not failure. You are not your emotions. You are not your thoughts. You are that. That is the truth. And once that shift happens, then our relationship with the world, our relationship with spirituality, everything changes. So when Krishna says what has been heard and what is yet to be heard, he's talking about all the scriptures, all the instructions that we have already read, what already heard. He's saying they were all important, but you need to understand that they were a means. They were not the goal. Once you have arrived at for example, a lot of us have used GPS, correct? I mean, that has become so common these days that even if you have to go to buy vegetables, we like to look at the GPS in the car. So we use a GPS. But how many of you look at a map or a GPS once you have already reached your destination? See, once you reach the destination, are you not now focusing on doing what you came to do? Like if you came for shopping, you start shopping. If you came to a restaurant, don't you start eating? Or in the restaurant, do you still keep looking at the GPS? See, that is the whole point. Krishna says those scriptures, those teachings, they were all to help you reach somewhere. But once you reached, don't still get hung up. Don't still get so attached. So Krishna does not say the scriptures are not important. Krishna does not say that the GPS is not important. Krishna says they are a means. They themselves are not the goal. It's a very important differentiation. So Arjuna, his confusion about conflicting duties and scriptures is now very relatable because these are things that he has already heard. And now he is attached to that. See the problem? And that is what Krishna is trying to help. He's explaining to Arjuna, and through Arjuna is explaining to all of us. Because what happens is, spirituality is more like a marketplace, at least these days. Where there are so many spiritual ideas and so many spiritual axioms that we come across. And you cannot escape the fact that many times you will see there are a lot of differences between what different people say, and sometimes these spiritual wisdom or spiritual advices, they seem to contradict each other. Have you not felt that way? Like one person will say one thing, one person will say something totally the other way around. And so how do you navigate this? How do you navigate these confusions? How do you navigate these contradictory teachings? How do you navigate this kind of noise all around? How do you know what is right? It's a problem, and Arjuna is facing the same problem. Arjuna says, I think this is sin. I think that is wrong. I think this. It's all based on what he has heard already, and he is causing a lot of chaos in his mind. And Krishna's answer is very practical. So Krishna is saying, don't try to intellectualize every teaching. Instead of that, why don't you use your own viveka to find that steady place, that steady, calm place within yourself first. So Krishna is not against any intellectualism. Krishna is not against the intellect, but instead he is trying to help us understand what is the purpose of the intellect, what is the role of the intellect. The very profound statement is Krishna wants us to move from knowing about the truth to actually knowing the truth. You see the difference there? What is your goal? Is your goal to know about the truth, or is your goal to know the truth? Is your goal to know that honey is sweet, or is your goal to actually know honey? Like taste it and figure it out yourself that it is. So that is Krishna's message here. He says, all the teachings, they are like fingers which are pointing at the moon. Don't keep focusing on the finger and losing out on the glory of the moon that it's pointing to. That is all Krishna is saying. So this shift cannot happen suddenly because it has to be a gradual process. This is where we say we need Shravan, Manan and Nididhyasan. It's sadhana, it is process, consistency. And then Krishna is assuring us that if you have persistence, then this practice will lead your intellect beyond that Moha Kalilam. This is what will take you out of that dense forest of delusion. But instead, if you are stuck in the forest, you are trying to analyze every leaf, every tree, every road, you are trying to intellectualize, this road seems narrow, this road seems broad, somebody told me that, narrow roads will go this way, and then that's it. Then you are spending all your life inside that forest of delusion. See the beautiful message here. So practically it is kind of hopefully trying to resolve some internal debates that a lot of us have. Like we are wondering, for example, some of us already, this question, I'm surprised it didn't come in the previous session, but in the previous batch, I had this question where people said, okay, Guruji, then tell me for sure, what is more important? Is meditation more important? Or is selfless service more important? Because you talk about Nishkama Karma, you're talking about Dhyana, you're talking about this, you're talking about that. So what is really important? Krishna's answer is beautiful, profound. Krishna says, the apparent conflict happens only when your mind is confused. He says, when there is no confusion, there will be no conflict. For example, Krishna is saying, if you do Nishkama Karma or if you do service with the right mindset, does it itself not become a meditation? So there is no contradiction. It is not that should I do meditation or should I do service. It is that do service in such a way that it becomes meditation. See? So, but this realization will come only when you try to rise above the Moha Kalilam. Otherwise, what happens? You spend most of your life debating, intellectualizing. One person says meditation is superior, one person will say service is superior. You'll be fighting, you'll be arguing. Whereas Krishna is laughing and saying, but the truth is beyond that. You have to transcend that to realize the actual truth. So awesome. I'll come back to this in a little while, okay? And then we go to 2.53, where Krishna is addressing a problem that every seeker is going to face, every serious seeker. Where, as I said, the spiritual marketplace full of conflicting advice. And as we just said, one will say meditation is superior, one will say, like, this has been the debate going on, right? Between all those paths of yoga. One scripture will talk about one way of learning, one scripture will say something else, and it feels like, why is there so much confusion? Why is there so much conflict, contradiction? And so Krishna is saying, don't try to find the right teaching. Instead, try to reach the state of consciousness where the contradictions resolve themselves, where you already have raised above that. Now, I'll give you an example. Like, I don't know if any of you have here like trekking. Are there anyone here who enjoys trekking? Okay, doesn't seem to be a popular topic except for maybe Purva. See, what happens is, especially if you are trying to trek on a unknown. Okay, we have Deepa also. Very nice. So, especially when you are trying to trek unknown, areas, unknown mountain areas, you will see there are many paths, and there will be a confusion. Should I take this route or should I take that route? Isn't it? Especially Deepa, you have gone to some very major treks, and I know that you needed a guide to tell you which route to take. But the guide is not telling you the only route that will take you to the destination. The guide is telling you that route which will be good for you. Like, if you are a beginner, take this route. If you are a real expert, then you can go by the risky route, so on and so forth. But what is Krishna saying here? Krishna is saying, once you reach the top of the mountain and then you look down, don't you see that all the routes anyways, all the various paths are anyways coming here only? Suddenly, is there any longer any conflict now? Does the question now arise, is that route better or this route better? Because now you have reached the summit. You have already reached the top of the mountain. Now it doesn't matter. Now you can see very clearly that all the routes were anyways coming to the same summit. Right? That is Krishna's advice. He's saying, elevate yourself. Focus on transcending all of this. And once you reach the summit, he says, the contradictions and confusions, they will take care of themselves. Contradictions will go away by themselves. You don't have to intellectualize. Instead of that, assume that you are standing on a fork where one route goes right and one route goes left. And a few people are there debating which is better, and you are also there debating and fighting. And for hours, you are standing there instead of actually moving on one path and reaching the summit. It's the whole idea here. Tomeji, you had a question?
It's funny, Guruji, like Momita is at the forefront, but you're assuming that I have a question, but I have a question. She doesn't. So, in corporate life, especially in human resources, we usually have to be a guide and also the seeker of the goal at the same time. I'll give an example. So, whenever there are any change management initiatives that need to be rolled out in human resources, usually it has an enterprise-wide impact. Now, in those situations, how do I apply this concept? Because then as a guide, I have to recommend, let's just say recommendation number 1, this is how we can do things. Recommendation number 2, this is how we can do things. And at the same time, have to achieve the goal of, based on certain achievement of certain parameters, achieve that particular goal, right? So how do I balance this out?
Yeah, I think we had a similar discussion earlier. I'll give you a counter example. Maybe that will help explain the point more clearly. And I don't mind taking names because I'm not defaming any company. So when I was in Amazon, of course you spoke about HR, I'm giving you this example. when I was in Amazon AWS, we used to take the employee engagement survey very seriously. So the employee engagement survey will ask questions to all employees. Are you happy? Do you feel like your career is taken care of? And do you think your leader has clarity? And there are many such questions which are asked. And they categorize these questions into many buckets. And depending on what is the percentage of positive answers, it is either a green or yellow or a red. So far you are with me? Okay. What the problem became was the managers became so obsessed with getting a green on their scorecard that many times they used to start manipulating or almost sometimes forcing their employees to give them a good feedback. It almost became like a, nobody will say this openly, but hey, if you screw my score, then maybe I'm also not going to be that nice to you when it comes, because managers also give feedback to employees. That is also measured, right? So very interesting phenomenon started happening. And this is something I'm very passionate about, because I used to always say this to my own leadership, that our goal cannot be the status, because a new trend emerged where there were many leaders who used to have beautiful green scorecards. But then they used to also be the leaders with the most attrition. And it became like a paradox. If their team is so green, how come people are leaving that team? See, that gives the answer you are asking, because they were focusing on the outcome. Their focus was on a green scorecard. Their focus was not on being such a great leader that the scorecard would automatically become green. So when we say every company, every person has goals, that is okay. But we discussed that earlier. You have goals, and then you have to figure out what needs to be done to reach that goal. Invariably, the answer is success comes with excellence. And then your focus should be on excellence. Define your goals, but don't focus on the goal. Define your goals and then focus on what you think you need to do to reach the goal. The goal then automatically comes. The outcome automatically comes. Is the whole teaching. The teaching of Krishna does not say you should not have goals or you should not have outcomes. He says you should not focus on them. Just like a surgeon. No surgeon will go into operating theater not wanting the patient to live. Is there any surgeon like that who thinks the patient should die as soon as they start operating? So their goal is there, that they want near 100% success rate. But when they are operating, should they be worrying about that outcome? Is the whole question. So I hope that makes sense. So the key phrase here, Krishna in 2.53 says, steady and unmoved in samadhi. Now, samadhi doesn't always mean you have to give up your body or something. Krishna says here that samadhi is the natural state of consciousness when all agitation ceases. So this is the stillness we are talking about. And see, what happens is Krishna is pretty much inverting the whole philosophy. People will say that yoga means union. People will say that if you practice yoga, then you will get union with the divine. Krishna says, if you can feel that union, that is yoga. He says, if you can feel that stillness, that is yoga. It's so beautiful. I mean, it's hard to put it in words, but this is probably the most, I would say, transforming, radical teaching that you will come across in our scriptures. So the practice of yoga removes the illusion of separation. That is why they say yoga means union. It doesn't mean that you are really working hard to go and unite with somebody. Krishna says yoga actually means you are just removing the illusion of separation. You are never separate to start with. Is the profound message. So Krishna, that is why Krishna says, if you can establish that inner calmness, if you can establish that, then the right action, the right understanding, they will all flow naturally. It is not about achieving a special state. It is about discovering the stillness that is already present deep within you. A great example given is the sky. There are so many clouds that pass under a sky, dark clouds, white clouds, thunder clouds, rain clouds, all of that. But don't you feel like the sky itself seems unimpacted? Look at how the sky is, and then there are a lot of clouds going under it. But once the clouds have done the job, once the clouds have passed away, the sky is still the same. And Krishna says that is how we inherently are, and that is where we should identify with. That is our consciousness, awareness, which is observing everything without getting impacted by anything. And that is our true nature, is Krishna's message. And when we are able to get that, when you are able to identify with that, Krishna says that itself is samadhi. And that kind of samadhi can be there in our day-to-day lives. We can be living, breathing, acting, and still in samadhi. That is Krishna's very beautiful, profound message. So all this sounds awesome, right? Arjuna also felt that way. Arjuna was like, wow. So I need to be a Stithaprajnya. I need to reach the state of calmness. And he's now like, looks like it all seems very awesome. But of course, he is our friend Arjuna. So what do you think comes next? More questions. So Arjuna then tells Krishna, this is all so awesome, Krishna. You tell me that I need to be steady, I need to be calm. That is the word used, Stithaprajnya. Then he says, then now tell me, what is the description of such a person? What is the description of a person who has already achieved this calmness? Who is already in such kind of a samadhi you are talking about? How does such a person speak? How does such a person sit? How does such a person walk? That is Arjuna's question now. See, his question is sincere also, but his question is also revealing something. What is it revealing? He's asking for a practical description. Like he wants metrics. How do I identify? Very specific. But then what does it reveal? It's revealing that he's again focusing on external behaviors. Correct? On one level, it is showing that Arjuna is still thinking in terms of what happens outside. He's still thinking that our inner state of mind has to be perceived through something external. Some visible signs that we can use to judge somebody's internal state. At the same time, his question also reveals a deeper insight where, he understands instinctively that genuine realization cannot be a part-time accomplishment. No, he realizes that this kind of realization is going to show up in such a way that if I have that kind of realization, it is going to change how I walk, how I talk, how I sit. That is also another aspect of Arjuna's question. So Krishna again gives an answer, but again his answer is not what Arjuna really expects. Because Krishna doesn't immediately say, okay, here is the checklist. Instead, he's now focusing on, again, the internal state, the Stithaprajnya, where Krishna goes on to say that this kind of a person does not need to have any specific way of talking or speaking or sitting or walking. This is one of the most practical and important sections of the Gita, I would say, where Krishna is providing a detailed explanation on how this kind of a clear, calm consciousness functions in the world, in every description. So he's going to point past the action to the source. And he's directing our attention away from the behaviors to the inner understanding that produces any kind of behavior. See, for example, you look at the ocean and I'm going to ask, do you think the ocean is full of motion, or do you think the ocean is completely still? How many of you think the ocean is full of motion? Okay. Momita ji, why do you think it is full of motion?
First, like there's waves on the upper layer, then there are so many organisms moving in the underlayer.
Excellent. Excellent.
The tectonic plates moving.
Yes. Answer is not wrong. But some people said they think the ocean is still. Who thought the ocean was still? Oh, this is wonderful. So we have two people sitting together and one thinks the ocean is turbulent, one thinks, okay. So Meji, why is the ocean still?
I think the external factors make it move. Like all the waves we see, that is caused by the air. The animals move due to their own actions, not due to the movement of water. Now they can utilize the movement of water, but eventually they are doing their own actions.
Excellent. Excellent. Now tell me, is there a contradiction here? There is no contradiction. If you look at the surface, yes, there is motion. But if you go beyond to the depths of the ocean, there is stillness. Now the question is, what do you want to identify with? If you identify with what is outside, if you identify with the most gross aspect, there is always turmoil. There is always motion. There is always disturbance. But if you identify with that depth, then there is just stillness, there is just calmness. No, that is one of the profound teachings of Krishna. Purvaji, you had something?
How would you explain currents?
What is there to explain about currents?
Yeah, I mean, like the fact that, the ocean can have such strong currents, and that is movement, that is not stillness. So,
Correct, but is it impacting the ocean or is it impacting things that are in the ocean?
well, it has its movement irrespective of its impact. It's a very strong motion if you think about it, right?
Correct. I still didn't understand the question. Do you know that the currents are also not at the bottom, right? The currents are also somewhere in the middle of the ocean.
So are you saying that stillness is right deep down in the ocean closer to the earth?
I'm not really debating exactly how deep you have to go, but the fact is that there are parts of the ocean which are completely still. In fact, the most delicate organisms, they live right at the bottom of the ocean. They are so delicate that if you even touch them, you're going to destroy them. But they are able to survive in the depths of the ocean because there is complete stillness. Is the whole question there. But regardless, why talk about currents? Like we said that it is agreed that there are waves, there are storms, there are animals, there are moving around. There's a lot of motion, not just currents. But the question is, what do you identify with is the key question.
Okay.
Because there is no doubt that there is a part of the ocean which is completely still, which is completely calm. Okay. Just like that, within us, there is that part of us which is completely still, completely calm, and we can translate that. Like you raised a very important point, like even in our own scriptures, they say that your actions are just what we see. That is very gross. But before you acted, you thought about it. Because a thought has to precede an action. Then you can keep going deeper. But before you could think something, there was an impulse for thought itself. That is called spurna. So there are multiple levels of action. But beyond all of that, beyond this spurna, there is that calmness. And Krishna says, identify with that calmness. Again, we come back to Krishna's message. He's saying that whatever Krishna is saying is real, but it has to fundamentally change how we engage with the world, like how we speak. Does it change? Yes. In what way does it change? Because now the speaking is not based on that inner compulsion. Some people, they'll speak even when they don't have anything valuable to add to the discussion. They just want to be heard. That is because of that compulsion. Whereas those who are established in that calmness, they're going to speak only when it is necessary, only if it is adding value. Some of you already know that teaching, right? Before you say something, ask yourself, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And only then you should speak. But how can you even get into that kind of discrimination if your mind is not calm? Is the whole point. How they sit, no, it's not about a posture. It's not whether you're sitting as if you are in, meditation pose. It is, are you present? Are you sitting in awareness? The body can be relaxed, but are you still aware? Are you still present? How you walk? Just like that. Are you walking forcefully? Are you walking naturally? So, the ordinariness of the realization can be disappointing to seekers. Maybe it was disappointing to Arjuna because Arjuna was expecting that Stithaprajnya means he will have a halo around his head, or, when he walks, he will be 2 inches above the ground. And Krishna is saying there's nothing like that. Does it disappoint any of you? Were you all thinking that once you reach that state of calmness, you will get a halo around your head, or maybe, you will start floating on the air or something? So Krishna is saying, don't expect any of that. Krishna says, outwardly, it may all feel extremely ordinary, extremely normal. That will not give you any indication of what's going deep inside. But your focus has to be there, deep inside, Arjuna, is the whole thing. There is one very great danger of interpreting all of this or misinterpreting this kind of teachings. Modern psychology calls it spiritual bypassing. What that means is you're trying to use a spiritual idea to avoid dealing with your responsibilities. For example, somebody will say, I'm practicing non-attachment. So somebody is in pain, somebody needs help, and this person says, I'm just practicing non-attachment, so I don't have to go and help that person. So this kind of dangerous misinterpretations will happen. So my request is, please let us all try not to fall into that trap. So whenever we have a question, whenever we have a doubt, let us make sure we understand the key teachings, because it's a complete misunderstanding if somebody thinks that way. It's completely misunderstood Krishna's teachings, because Krishna is not talking about bypassing your responsibilities. Krishna is not talking about bypassing human experiences. He's talking about transforming our relationship with life. Because the person of steady wisdom, they still feel emotions, but they are just not overwhelmed or controlled by the emotions. They still have preferences, but they are not enslaved by their preferences. They engage fully with life, but they are doing it from a position of stableness, centeredness, and calmness. So that is what is said. When you actually are practicing vairagya, you care deeply. You are able to care more. I think we spoke about this in some, I don't remember exactly in which lecture, but there's another great saint. Do you remember the name of that saint? The one who wrote 3 volumes of Bhagavad Gita. The name is in the tip of my tongue, but I'm not able to remember. He's from the Advaita Vedanta school. And he said that everybody loves their child. It's very normal. And he said, when you say, I love my child, there's nothing wrong with it, but you have to learn to see the attachment behind that. And he says that the moment you understand where you are in attachment, and the moment you are able to handle that, the moment you are able to handle and practice vairagya, detachment, then you will be able to love your neighbor's child also. Because what is happening, it's not that you stop loving, it is just that you stop having a reason for that love. I love because my child, that is attachment. I love because it is just a child. Doesn't matter whose child it is. Isn't your scope of love increasing? Isn't your care deepening? That is the message of Krishna. When Krishna says don't be attached means it is not making you an uncaring person. It is actually making you a deeply caring person, whose care is having more scope and more impact. It's a very profound teaching. We will have to practice it in order to realize it. And also the another trap we all fall into is we think spiritual progress means there has to be something dramatic. As I just said, Guruji ke sir ke aage piche hai kya? I mean, I don't see a halo, I don't see a light, So this kind of trap, because eventually you will expect that from your own self. Because if you are now, Guruji is saying, Krishna is saying, practice, be consistent. You tried chanting for a few days, you tried meditation for a few days, you look in the mirror, I'm not seeing any change, No, so that's a trap, because that is the problem. And Arjuna is saying, how does such a person walk? How does such a person talk? That is why Krishna doesn't go and try to give a checklist of. Krishna is trying to dispel the confusion. He's trying to say there is a problem, Arjuna, in the way you think. Enlightened people can look remarkably ordinary externally. There may be enlightened people in your neighbors. There can be enlightened people in your teachers. There can be an enlightened person who is standing in line next to you to buy a movie ticket. Who knows? Because what distinguishes them is not external at all. It is all an internal job. What is it internally that distinguishes such a person? Is the absence of psychological conflict. Such a person their mind is not full of psychological conflicts. Because that ordinariness in itself is true miracle, where you live a full human life without psychological suffering. Like somebody said, a pain you cannot escape. Nobody can escape pain. But suffering is entirely optional. It's very beautiful. So again, internally having perfect alignment, internally being a yogi, internally being a Stithaprajnya, has nothing to do with how it manifests externally. Externally, they may still come across as a really ordinary person, and we should not try to judge a person by how they are externally, because that is a trap. It's a very misconception. We should look at Krishna himself. He's the ultimate example of non-attachment. But was he not taking a human form? Was he not passionately engaged in guiding Arjuna? Will you now look at him and say that looks like this guy is attached to Arjuna? We run the risk of doing that, right? Because if we focus only on external, won't we say that why is he driving the chariot of... I thought he's God, all-powerful, but here he's driving a chariot. So many such misconceptions will come, correct? They will all come when we are trying to focus on external and missing the whole point on how Krishna was a complete yogi internally. But then tell me something, when you look at Krishna's life, did it ever look like he was not engaged in life? Did it ever look like he was not caring at all? He was so engaged. He was so involved in every aspect of life. Isn't it? His life, does it not show that how he lived fully? And that is the message for all of us. So how do we apply some of this in our daily life? I will give you some simple, like many times we do many actions in our day-to-day life, but we are doing it like a autopilot mode. Many times we mechanically do stuff. Like maybe some of us, we are washing vessels before we put it in the dishwasher. How do we do that? When we are washing a vessel, are we cursing? Why am I having to do this? Or it's not my job, Momita is shaking her leg like this, head like this, and Soumya is shaking his head like this. And so so the point is, when you try to wash cups or plates next time, try to feel the temperature of the water. When was the last time you actually paid attention to the temperature of the water? When was the last time you tried to pay attention to the weight of every plate? Or when was the last time you actually, like a child, felt, excited with the small bubbles that the soap is creating? See, that is awareness. That is being mindful, being involved in what you do. At that time, don't let those other thoughts get into your mind. See, it's a simple. I'm giving a very simple example, but that applies to almost everything we do. Now the next, once you are aware, once you are mindful, now add the other dimension of non-attachment. Now how do you practice vairagya here? You will ask, where is vairagya in washing a cup or a plate? Now the vairagya is, your focus should be to make sure the cup and plate becomes clean. But you shouldn't get attached to it remaining clean. Because the next day people are going to dirty it, they are going to drink coffee in it, or they are going to eat food in it. That is going to get dirty again the next day. Now, are you hung up on that? See, then you are not practicing vairagya. This is how you can practice vairagya. Focus, just be mindful, be aware, enjoy the act of washing, and then appreciate how clean you are able to make it, and that's it. Then detach. The very next minute, if somebody picks up that plate and dirties it, you don't have to go wild. You don't have to go mad. You see, that is detachment. Can you do that? So detachment doesn't mean you have to sit in a mountaintop and, half naked. And no, in your daily life, everyday small tasks, there are opportunities where we can practice mindfulness, we can practice awareness, and we can practice detachment. This is sadhana. And the more we do that, the more it is going to become second nature to us. This is how we reach that state of Stithaprajnya. And also, again, coming back to the topic of contradictory teachings, you cannot escape that. This is the information age where there is no filter. There are so many YouTubes and MP3s and books. Everybody is free, but the problem is you will come across contradictions. There is no going away from that fact. Like one teacher will say, everything is illusion, sab maya hai. Whereas another person will say, no, the world is the body of God. And one will say, you control your destiny. Have you not heard this? Where people will say, your destiny is in your hands. And you control your destiny. But then another person will say, Bhagwan ka, without God's will, even a leaf doesn't move. In other words, they will say that everything is because of grace of God. You see the contradictions. I'm not making it up. It is already all around us. Correct? No, but then if we try to intellectualize each of that, and if we try to debate, and if we try to prove who is right, who is not right, that is the dense forest of delusion. Moha Kalilam, Krishna is talking about. He's saying, then you're going to get stuck. Then you're going to get lost in the jungle. Because the real truth is, there is no one truth. The real truth is also that everything is truth. It all depends on us elevating ourselves to the top of the mountain so that the contradictions just go away by themselves. You cannot stand on the path and argue which path is better. You have to transcend and go above. Only then the contradictions will automatically go away. Such a powerful teaching, isn't it? So these verses, they have like a very revolutionary teaching that we are still unpacking. I hope I've done a decent job, but I know deep inside that there is so much more that we can talk about. There is so many better ways to explain all of this. But we need to understand that Krishna is pointing to a very fundamental shift in how consciousness, being conscious, being mindful, how that transforms our experience, transforms our relations. So, because the conventional spiritual path, based on which books you have read or which videos you have watched, the conventional spiritual wisdom says that we are all in bondage, isn't it? The conventional wisdom says we are all bondage, so we need to somehow find ways to get liberation. Don't you all agree? Is that not what we have all studied in so many different scriptures, that we have to do something to gain moksha, liberation? Whereas Krishna approaches it differently. Krishna says, you are already free, you are always free. The problem is not whether you are free or not free. The problem is what you are identifying with. You are identifying with bondage. So Purvaji, that's what we are trying to tell or answer to your question. The problem is not whether there is motion or whether there is no motion, because both are true. The problem is, what are we identifying with? If we identify with the waves, yes, it's going to be a constant storm. It is not that you have to now become calm. Krishna is saying the calmness is already the reality. Your deepest part, your actual reality is that calmness. You just have to stop identifying with that which is not calm. Your reality is you are already that Sat. You are already free. The problem is you have to stop identifying with bondage. It's a very powerful teaching. So it is not like just a word play or philosophy. It's got very profound practical implications, because see, the problem is, have you heard this philosophy? Somebody say that you cannot get happiness as long as you are chasing it. If you have not heard it, I will tell you now. It's a very powerful philosophy that says that you cannot get happiness as long as you chase happiness. It's not just some mumbo jumbo, it's a very logical statement, because when you are chasing happiness, what does it mean? See, when will you chase happiness? You will chase happiness when you are not happy, na? So as long as you are chasing, you are going to remain unhappy. Isn't it very logical? That's exactly what is the message. The message is, you don't have to chase freedom. When will you chase freedom? Only when you think you are not free. The very fact that you think you need to chase freedom implies that you are identifying with yourself being not free. And that is Krishna's message. You are already free. You are already, vast. You are already something that is never impacted by any of these things. Learn to identify with that. Some great man said, the most dangerous prison is the prison that we all carry with ourselves everywhere. Portable prison. We take our prison with us wherever we go. And that is Krishna's message. Is the bondage is our own identity, our own identification. Caring deeply doesn't mean you are in attachment. It's the other way around. When you are detached, you care more deeply. And the paradox of the pathless path, because one of the most radical implications is that there is no one path to truth. That sounds like a contradiction, but Krishna has been very specific. All Krishna says is, you have to rise above all these paths, and automatically you will realize that there is no contradiction at all. But if you don't raise above, then there will only be debates, there will only be conflicts, there will only be confusions. Have you all seen at least people in India, I think we have all seen buildings being constructed, right? We have seen how, when they construct a building, do you see how they create those wooden poles, and they'll put those, it's called scaffolding. They create those wooden platforms and also that the workers can climb and do stuff. But once the building is completely ready, do they still keep the scaffolding around? Wouldn't it be ridiculous that the building is ready and still they're attached to the scaffolding? You see the point. That is Krishna's message. Krishna says those scriptures, those thoughts, those philosophies, they're all like those scaffoldings. They have a purpose. But once the building is ready, he says, don't be attached to the scaffolding. Let people take it away so that they can use it for another building that's being constructed. That is the whole message. So I hope all this made sense. I know I've taken a lot of time. Very grateful to all of you for patiently sitting and listening through it. I still have 2 more pages, but I think I will just send the notes over to you. This is what I was feeling when I was creating notes. I felt like there is still so much depth in Krishna's teachings. And so with that, I think I can stop talking. I'll open the floor. If anybody has questions, comments, concerns, please go ahead. I just want to make sure that these teachings are clear, and because it's very life transforming if we can internalize it and put it to use. Okay, we again have is it Soumya or okay? Yeah, please go ahead.
Guruji, Krishna never talks about what's right or wrong. Like, we are coming from a place where we think that we know what the truth is or what the ultimate goal is. But while we're traversing there, what if, like, I am constantly thinking, is this right or wrong? Because that's how we have been taught, right? Like, from like nishkam karma to like having full focus on the action. A lot of people have done them, and then a lot of we know, like, it might be a stupid example, but Adolf Hitler also did everything with his full focus on whatever he was out to do, right? But how do we distinguish if that action is okay or not?
No, that is a very profound question, but I don't think Krishna has said there is no right and there is no wrong. Like the whole war of Kurukshetra was a war of dharma. In fact, Krishna's message to Arjuna is you should use your viveka, you should use your discrimination to know what is aligned with dharma. And then you have to follow that. That is anyways the root of the message. So that is not the context when we said, there is no one path. What we are saying is, you have understood that what is the absolute right is for us to evolve and reach that absolute truth, that absolute realization. That is everybody's supreme dharma. However, how do you reach there? For that, there are multiple paths, and there Krishna is saying there is no right path or wrong path. Provided you are looking for a path that takes you to that ultimate destination. See, so it is very important. In fact, Krishna says that what you do is not that important, your mindset is important. What does he mean by the mindset? One is detachment, the other is your intent aligned with higher purpose? Is your intent aligned with dharma? That is always there. So Hitler is a perfect example of what we just studied. Moha Kalilam, dense forest of delusion. That is delusion. And Krishna is always telling us not to fall into the trap of delusion. What is delusion? Delusion is strong attachment. Hitler was a great example of somebody who was so vehemently attached to his own thoughts, his own beliefs, that even when the entire world was giving evidence on why he was wrong, he would not accept, he would not look at it. That is the danger of delusion that we should not fall into. I hope that makes it a little bit clearer for you. Excellent. So I think if there are no other questions or comments, then we can wrap up the session. Once again, okay, we have one more. Okay, I'll just take this question.
It's not a question, Guruji, but I'll try to find a video. I saw this video from Sadhguru, and he also said the same thing. Like, once you identify with yourself, you will die protecting it. And it will hinder your long-term goals, because then you're fighting all of these battles which don't matter and which don't contribute to your goals. I'll try to share that video. I'll try to find that video and share it with the satsangis.
Okay. So my request is, as far as possible, don't get into this, there are people who like to collect coins, there are people who collect stamps, there are people who collect, cameras and all of that, cars. And then there are people who collect knowledge. For them, even spiritual knowledge is more like a quest to collect. Like I have 1,000 videos and 5,000 MP3s, and so many books. It's all okay. It's all good. But we just studied. We just now studied what Krishna was saying. So what is more important is the practical aspects that Krishna has taught. Let us start small. Try to practice mindfulness. Try to practice awareness. And try to practice detachment in such a way that you will eventually rise above all of these various contradictions and conflicts. And that should be our goal, primary goal. And till we are not making progress, it is advised not to get too distracted. Like pick any guru, pick any path, but try not to get into too many. Like, for example, I can guarantee you that if you go and listen to a Bhakti Yoga podcast, and then you go listen to somebody who is practicing Buddhism and you listen to that podcast, you will be utterly confused. Because the Bhakti Yogi will say everything is God, all is God, only God. And the Buddhist guy will say there is no God. But then both are talking about liberation, both are talking about evolution, and it's going to cause confusion and it's going to take away a lot of our precious bandwidth. So that is where it is always better to seek guidance from somebody and then follow their guidance, at least until we have made some progress into being mindful, being aware, and practicing vairagya, and then you will yourself get that required clarity. Chitraji, you had something to say?
Hare Krishna, Guruji. Yes, I just wanted to get this clarity from a practical perspective, that just from your ocean example, so if we have to stop identifying with the bondages, is it the same about where we choose to focus? And isn't that also same as just focus on your actions and the task itself, which technically means being in present? Isn't all this like coming from just being in present?
Exactly. More than being in present, because Soumya just spoke about Sadhguruji. Sadhguru also made a very funny observation. He said, what do you mean be in the present? Show me how you can be anywhere else. So yes, being in the present, correct. But the more technically correct word that is used by Krishna is being mindful and being aware.
When we are in awareness, then we will be in Ananya Chintan, right? Like in that.
All of that will come. Yes, exactly. Like, are you aware of your thoughts? Are you aware of your state of mind?
Yeah.
That is what is important. And once you practice this awareness, then see if you are able to develop vairagya in the true sense. And then you will be able to live the teaching of karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. That is, so these are all like, user manual for how we can gradually elevate ourselves. That is the real teaching. Okay, then. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. And wishing you all a wonderful week ahead. So next week, some volunteers have volunteered gracefully to conduct a revision session. So I request all of you to support them with your love and patience, and let's have this group exercise and small revision in the next session. Okay, me and Kalpana, we are traveling, so instead of me conducting the session, we will have a few volunteers. Volunteers means they are people who have already finished a previous batch of Bhagavad Gita, so they are able to bring in some context, and I believe it's going to be a fun interactive session. So, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Okay.